and Joey Logano is around. Spins down to the inside of the racetrack. Over, wheel-barreling, now down the back straightaway. End over end, side over side. Also collected Reed Sorensen. Also Robbie Gordon. Martin Truex Jr. is collected as Joey Logano goes for a wild tumble in turn 3 here at Dover.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is episode 15 of Dirty Air, your number one podcast for NASCAR, all DFS gambling related stuff. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Baumel, Gambling DFS Tips on Twitter, and I'm joined by Jason, DFS NASCAR on Twitter. Jason, what's up?
Hey, what's up, guys? Man, episode 15 already? Look at us go, boys. We are moving. It's hard to imagine. It's crazy to think we've already got 15 of these underneath our belt. It's been a lot of fun.
Brandon Cruz, DFS on Twitter. Brandon, what's up?
Howdy.
All right, Jason, you know the first question every week. You're the first to answer. Was it a good race? Was it a bad race? What did you think of last week at Darlington?
Darlington, I think, was a pretty good race. I liked seeing the low aero package, the high horsepower. I liked seeing the cars sliding around the corner. I liked seeing guys bouncing off the wall. I mean, it was Darlington. It was a pretty fun, entertaining race to watch. Obviously, wasn't great that we saw Truex whoop some ass and stretch out and just dominate the whole race. But other than that, I think we saw a lot of good racing through the field for when Fox would show it. I mean, it seemed like they like to show a lot of stuff that wasn't very interesting. But yeah, it was a fun race.
Yeah, Brandon, I was going to say, I feel like this is kind of a prototypical when I think of what you might think of a good race. Obviously, Jason brought Fox that, they didn't really show a lot of it. But, the couple cars being the fastest, obviously Truex being the fastest, some passing going on through the field, some fairly aggressive driving, trying to get some spots. And I don't know, it seemed like, at least from my point of view, you would have thought it was a good race. Did you think it was a good race?
Yeah, I mean, the drivers were wheeling it. If things are going to be spread out, like if people are going to be... Truex obviously had the fastest car. Larson was second, and if Larson didn't have that speeding penalty trying to outrace Harvick at the end of stage 2, I think Truex's lead probably would have been shorter for a lot longer versus just being at the end. But I like seeing the cars get sideways out of the corners. Like I like seeing the drivers wheel the car around. I was seeing a loud minority on Twitter saying that this racing is boring. They need to get that 550 package back out and blah, blah, blah. Whereas, like, here, I like the off-throttle time. I like the drivers being able to drive with the throttle and everything.
It kind of made this kind of go back a little bit towards, like, what we were kind of used to back in the DFS world is when we had actual true dominators, and that lead, that clean air out in front plays a huge role in that with that low aero package, doesn't it, Brandon? To where, like we saw Truex, yeah, he had the greatest car, but he also ended up getting that track position. And as we look forward to Darlington down the road and we get back to this package, I think that's something we could look at, like expect somebody to probably dominate a big chunk of the race.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, wild how you give them high horsepower and low downforce, and it produces good racing. Wild idea.
How there are other people who are saying it wasn't a great race because of that reason, But I mean, you can't please everybody. I said what they should do is they should put 900 horsepower, low aero package, let them race, and then just have a competition caution in the last 30 laps. So you get your manufactured finished. We get cars loose, we get drivers wheeling, and then everybody's happy. At least if they tell you they're going to throw a caution in the last 30 laps every time, it makes it a little bit easier to deal with.
So during the last race, I went back to my strategy of writing notes and questions down to the race to ask you guys, because I feel like it wasn't, some of the other races we had seen wasn't much going on. So Jason, the first question I have for you, you kind of already answered it a little bit. Was Martin Truex that good? Was it the clean air, or was it the package, or was it a combination of all three?
I mean, you don't lead almost 300 damn laps without having a great car. And obviously we know Truex is a pretty good wheel man. I mean, we've seen him dominate a couple of the other flat tracks this year with this package. So it's no surprise. Like I said, I mean, he probably put to rest that whole Martin Truex can only dominate night races. I hope we can stop hearing that now.
Well, speaking of that, Brandon, when Martin Truex is in that Auto Traders paint scheme, I mean, do we just have to play him now? Because obviously that's more important.
Dude, I shit you not. Like, as soon as the race started, and I was like, I saw the Auto Traders on there. First off, it was hotter than what I thought it was going to be, and that usually goes into Truex's wheelhouse. And even Truex, in the race, he was like, "Wow, this track is way slicker and hotter than we expected." Like, good thing our car was, stupidly set up for this. But when I saw that Auto Traders thing, I was like, "Oh my God, really?" I only played one lineup, and I didn't have Truex in it. But when I saw that, I was like, "Yeah, of course. The quote unquote throwback paint scheme with hardly nothing changed on it with Auto Traders on there."
Was it supposed to be a throwback? I just thought they mailed it in.
I think they melded into a throwback that he did. I don't really
It's
care.
just throwback from my win last year.
So
Michael McDowell threw back from his Daytona 500 win, didn't he?
And I think Kyle Larson did it to his dirt car or whatever his was.
His go-kart, right? Yeah, his first go-kart,
something like
I
that.
think. Which, who can validate that?
So Jason, a question I have for you. Obviously Almirola and Cole Custer not the days they were looking for. But I would say overall a fairly positive day for Stewart Haas. Harvick was decently fast, and Chase Briscoe, I think he finished 11th, 12th. I mean, do you think this was a better day for Stewart Haas as a whole, for Briscoe, for Harvick? How did you look at this for them?
I mean, yeah, that's something that I definitely took away from it. I don't know how much it means for Harvick because we're still not seeing that dominating speed that we're going to want out of the price tag we've been paying for Harvick. But I think it is definitely promising for the rest of these guys to see, you saw Briscoe race up into the top 15, and Custer was racing inside the top 15 before he wrecked. We never got to see what Almirola would do. So, I mean, it's at least promise. But I think these cars have, aside from Briscoe, I think these cars have been, around 15th, 16th place cars, at least Almirola and Custer, when they haven't ran in trouble. So it's just a matter of them staying out of trouble and stopping the dumb mistakes. I think you can expect, I think Custer is a guy you can expect moving forward, especially coming up on Dover this week, to have a good run, top 12, top 13. I think he has that kind of upside this week.
And Brandon, I know we talked about it earlier in the year with Chase Briscoe obviously struggling making that move from Xfinity up to Cup Series. Obviously, he's had success at the lower levels of the truck in the the truck in the Xfinity Series. Are we maybe getting to a part in the season where he's starting to get used to some of this stuff, or you think it's still going to take longer? And last week was just kind of, he had a decent car and opportunity presented itself.
I think it's the package. The Xfinity Series car, they have more horsepower than the Cup cars have. And so, when you look at people like Matt Benedetto, when you look at people that, I brought him out because he performs better in that package. But when you look at guys who come from the Xfinity Series, this is closer to the type of car they run there. That's why, some guys joke around saying that the trucks race closer to the Cup Series because the trucks are just pretty much full throttle with all the downforce that they have. And so when you get to races to where it's high horsepower, low downforce, that suits more to what Briscoe has raced his entire life. I also want to go back to the throwback. Look, I love Marty Robbins, okay? I'm from El Paso. I love the Masters Call. I love Continental Suit. I love Big Iron. I love all these these songs that Marty sung and wrote. But the entire broadcast was just either Mike Joy talking about people that he was friends with and they died, or it was Marty Robbins. That's all the broadcast was. And I hate it when Joy gets into those because he either talks about his modified racers from the Northeast, or all he talks about is Marty Robbins at Talladega and in the throwback races. That's all he talks about.
I wish they would have threw back and start showing us some of that old school Darlington footage, back in the day when these guys would freaking run around Darlington and they just had that guardrail up and those cars would go flying through the guardrail over off the embankment. You'd be watching it, also they just disappear over the embankment to the guardrail. They'd throw a caution and get the car out, and then they'd fucking start back up and keep racing with the big ass hole in the guardrail. Throw back to some of that footage if we're going to throw back to something.
Well, no, you got to tune into the pre-race show, dear, and put it out. That's the only time they show the throwbacks.
I never watched the pre-race. I haven't watched pre-race all year, I don't think.
Hey, Bubba did an interview. He didn't walk away.
Well, that's good on
I guess somebody told him that they do interviews before races.
But yeah, Briscoe, yes. Briscoe,
go ahead.
Briscoe, I agree with Brandon. I think it had a lot to do with the package, and I think that's something that you may want to look at this week. I almost wanted to fucking play Briscoe that last week. I looked at it, I had that same thought. This car should be closer to the way he's used to driving. He was great in Xfinity at Darlington, but man, I just couldn't do it. Just missed opportunity. I bet everybody's gonna be on him this week.
And so I always make a note to myself every time Ryan Newman finishes in the top 10, I need to remind Brandon that he said Newman would have 0 top 10 finishes this year.
I did.
This is now Newman's 4th top 10 finish this year. So maybe age not as big of a factor as we thought. Although I will say that 2 of them being at Daytona and the Bristol Dirt, but a top 10 is still a top 10. But the other thing, Jason, I mean, another mile-and-a-half track and Chris Buescher top 10. I mean, Chris Buescher
1.33. But yes, Roush, Buescher, and Newman. I mean, they had good runs at Homestead. They've had good runs at most of the mile-and-a-halves, especially the ones that have had tire wear. Both had great runs this week. I mean, I think a lot of momentum is going to pick up, and it should translate well to Dover coming up next week. And they're all both starting in those starting positions that nobody's going to play in that. So definitely like those Roush boys moving forward, as long as they keep showing us they have the potential to run inside that top 12, top 13 for us at this price tag.
And Brandon, it's crazy that I even think about asking this question, but going forward, you trust Roush Fenway or RCR cars more?
That's a good question. I'm going to probably lean RCR based on their consistency. Roush has been still up and down. Like, obviously, they're performing well at the 1.5 miles. I still like RCR a bit more. As we get more and more data this year, I might switch on that, but I'm still RCR. It's slightly. They're pretty even on my spectrum. Like, it just depends on pricing and where each of those 4 guys are starting.
Yeah, I think both those teams present an opportunity for value moving forward. It just seems like you get the RCR cars typically are about $1,000 more, it seems like, than your Roush guys.
Jason, a car that's been pretty decent all year for what he's been, didn't have a great week, was Daniel Sawyers. I think he finished 23rd or 24th. And his crew chief kind of just tweeted out basically like, we just missed the setup, just didn't have our week, just, we'll be back at it. Suarez still one of those guys you're looking for moving forward, as obviously being an extension of one of those RCR cars kind of, or is he still kind of in that back burner?
I don't think it's something to really to be that concerned about. I mean, it should have been actually pretty predictable that the smaller team, one car team, first year and would probably struggle when we got to this package because they don't have the data to fall back on like these other guys do. And plus, they've probably geared most of their season around like, the mile-and-a-half packages and the 550 package and stuff like that they were able to be competitive. So it doesn't really surprise me to see them struggle here. And you could even see the struggle as we move forward to Dover. But I think once we get back into the 550 horsepower mile-and-a-half tracks, I think you can definitely probably go back to that Daniel Suarez as well.
And Brandon, the final question I have for you. So last week we heard on the Radioactive on Martin Truex's radio that he said the 23 better watch out. Was he talking about on the racetrack, or was he talking about in his team that if he doesn't start performing better, he's going to be done?
It means both. Bubba's driving with his head up his ass. It goes back to I always joke because Truex complains anytime anybody races him at all on a racetrack. But man, Bubba was absolutely blocking and racing him so hard. Bubba shouldn't even be in that position with the car he's in, but I can't believe Truex didn't just spin him. Like, he should have just dumped him. Like, so in my mind, I'm like, dude, if that's anybody else, they're getting spun. Like, anybody else races the leader like that, they're getting spun.
Did he not get spun because it's basically the Joe Gibbs Racing extension? Is that why he didn't spin him?
No, it's just because it's Bubba.
I'm sorry. I put that on a T for Brandon. I apologize.
Oh, yeah. Am I wrong?
No, I don't. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's just, and at that point, I think he was just, Truex knew I think at some point Truex knows he has the fastest car, and as long as he doesn't get screwed on pit road and he's got that clean air, he's not going to be caught.
I don't know. I think Jason, if Truex is in a Penske car, I think if Bubba was in a Penske car, I think Truex probably dumps him.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think that's probably the case. But in terms of that, do we think... So we saw Larson get, I think, to almost Truex's back bumper at one point. I think he was within, third, second, something like that. Do we think that Larson used up his tires to get there, or do we think Truex just kind of, saved his a little bit, knowing that if Larson got to him, he still had the car to get away?
You're talking about at the end of the race, right?
Yeah, I think it was with, 20 laps, 15 laps, something like that.
Well, if you look at how they got through the lap traffic, Larson kept catching them on the exit, so that would kill any momentum that he would have out of the corners. I think that's really what played into that.
Jason, was there any point in the race you thought Larson was going to go by Truex or no?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you start seeing Larson reel him in there towards the end. You're thinking, oh shit, and you seen Larson riding that high line and starting making up ground. You're thinking that he could probably get there, especially when I had the outright bet on Truex. So I thought for sure that after my fantasy day was shit all day, that in the last 15 laps I'd lose my outright bet too. But held on.
All right. Anything we didn't mention from last week before we get to this week?
Oh, what? I'm going to sound really stupid here. What happened to Kurt Busch? I stepped outside to walk the dog for a bit, and I saw him on fire, and they never said what else happened to him. Usually they go through, like, throughout the race, and they didn't do that this week. So what happened to Kurt Busch?
He, oh man, didn't he just wrecked? Didn't he, I think he hit the outside wall? Inside
Was
wall?
Stenhouse the one that hit Kurt Busch, or was he the one that hit Custer or Almirola? Stenhouse hit one of them.
Almirola, I think.
Okay.
No, what is that? Who hit Almirola or Stenhouse hit Custer? I don't know. I don't know what happened to Kurt.
No, because Alfredo hit Custer.
Okay.
And Stenhouse hit Eric Almirola.
I'll be honest. I was in the shower and I got out, and Kurt Busch's car was on fire.
Yeah, it's like what's going on, man?
They're like, we're coming back from a break, and Kurt Busch's car's finally been extinguished. I was like, well, I didn't even know it was on fire.
Like I was watching it, and then, but I was watching it in the car on the car ride home, and I just remember seeing Kurt Busch on fire, but I can't remember what happened either. Did they show what happened to him?
They probably didn't catch it. Man, Fox never catches anything. They could be the whole field could wreck and they miss it. Like
they barely caught the Almirola wreck. Barely caught that.
Yeah, and then they show us that drone footage to where you can't see anything. It's like someone chucking an iPhone through the air.
God,
telling you to look
Almirola
at the
hit
footage.
a ton though, didn't he? I ain't seen a car jacked up like that in a while.
Yeah, and then it happened again an hour later.
Fox is the king of like showing like the full track and being like, if you look in the top right corner coming off of turn 3, you can see 2 specks, and the bottom speck hits the top speck, and we're not sure which one is which, but one of them gets spun out. Like that's what they do.
Yeah, you're either pixel peeking or you're just zoomed in all the way looking at a number on the car.
We didn't catch it, but we recreated it using our new iRacing technology.
Yeah, basically. Here's Larry Mack to show you what went wrong on the car.
Trust us, this is what happened. We swear.
There's nothing better than them just like literally giving Larry Mack a cheese grater and being like, here, shred this tire, and he just has the time of his life just shredding a tire with a cheese grater. Like people understand what happens to rubber on a tire when you use it. Like it comes off. Like I think it's pretty obvious. But yeah, Fox is Fox, and don't worry, when we get to NBC later in the year, we'll be complaining about Rick Allen.
I'm sure. Can we get Speed TV back, please?
Aggressive goes around.
No, man. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Tired of losing in fantasy sports? Times are changing. Now it's just you versus the numbers. Prize Picks is the perfect place for you whether you are the biggest sports fan around or you're a seasoned vet in the daily fantasy space. On Prize Picks, you simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go over or under their fantasy projection. Think Denny Hamlin is going to win the big race? Take his over and win real cash today. Prize Picks gives you the chance to win 10 times your money for getting 4 predictions correct. Entries are so simple. They can be made in less than 60 seconds. Sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app and use code DIRTYAIR, that's DIRTYAIR, DIRTYAIR, to get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks truly is daily fantasy simplified. All right. Let's get into this week. The Dryden 400 Dover International Speedway. 400 miles, 400 laps. That means it is a mile track by my great math. 120 laps in stage 1, 120 laps in stage 2, 160. Denny Hamlin will start next to Martin Truex. The Joe Gibbs cars on that front row. Truex on the pole. Hamlin behind him. William Byron, Kyle Larson, the Hendrick cars behind him. And then Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch round out the top 3 rows. Jason, what are your initial thoughts on this week? My initial thought is that it seems like it's a track that's hard to pass. Truex has been fast, and Truex starts on the front.
Well, I mean, first thing, it's Dover. You just mentioned right now that we have 400 laps. So when we have 400 laps, it's kind of like Bristol, means we have a lot of weight putting on those dominator points. The last 4 Dover races, we've seen 5 guys score over 100 DK points. One of them scored 171. That's Harvick in the second race last year. So there's potential for a shit ton of points to be put up. And even just outside of that, those 5 100-point performances, we've had, a slew I would say over 20, 25 guys who scored over 60 points here, because those dominator points get spread out through the field where you're going to have guys pick up 12, 10, 15, 20 dominator points, aside from the guys who rack up a ton. So really, I mean, this whole race is going to be strategy around, guys who are going to run towards the front, finish top 10, because, I mean, if you finish in the top 10 at Dover, you're most likely going to have racked up like 10 to 12 dominator points between fast laps, pit cycles, lap sleds, that kind of stuff. So that's really a strategy. It's not so much of a week you're going to be pointing to the position differential. Yeah, it's track position matters. You're going to want guys starting up the front and guys who are going to finish towards the front.
Brandon, your initial thoughts on this week?
Yeah, I think it's certainly going to be a 2 to 3 dominator lineup because these guys click off laps so quickly. You're going to want to have the guy who's leading, or most likely the fast laps and the laps led are going to be correlated with the guy in first place. I love Dover. I know the racing it's not the most exciting from a fan, but in terms of engineering of that track, I just love that track. And from a driver's seat, I mean, you're spending only like 5 seconds on the straightaways. You're like 7 seconds in a corner the entire time, just flying. I mean, the sense of speed is so huge. I love the track, and it's a shame that they're only going to one date because I really love Dover. I am happy that we don't have to deal with stupid Jimmy Johnson and his track history here every week because that was always horrible.
So, Brandon, you kind of mentioned it, but what are the similar tracks you look at for this? Because it is that mile, so it's not really a mile and a half, not necessarily a short track, but it's not, the difference between a mile and a half and this, for the most part, is obviously, like you said, not as much time in the straightaways, more in the corner. So what tracks do you look at, or is Dover its own?
It's really Dover. This is one of the tracks that I will look at track history because normally, drivers have a knack for this. I'll look at last week. Pretty much, I'm looking at Dover track history and last week at Darlington because it's the same package. Those are pretty much the only things I'm looking at. Obviously, I'll look at other races this year, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm looking at track history and last week.
Yeah, recent track history at Dover is what I'm looking at. This most recent Darlington race, and I think you can kind of maybe look a little bit at Homestead if you wanted to open it up a little bit more.
So Jason, we kind of talked about it a little bit before we started. Salaries had just came out. I think everyone expected, as it should be, Truex and Larson, the two highest priced guys at 11.9, 11.5. But then I think that after that, there's some kind of discrepancy on the order of the words. I mean the drivers there. So Denny Hamlin's 11.1, Chase Elliott's 10.7, Keselowski's 10.3, and Kyle Busch is 10,000. What out of those from Denny to Kyle do you think, the order of them, do you think they could have been switched and somebody should have been higher or lower? You think it's pretty much how it should be?
Yeah, they got it close. I think it's obvious like the top three here that we're looking at as far as dominators going into this week are going to be that Truex, Larson, Hamlin. I think they know the top three pretty accurately. Larson, the last time he ran here, he put up 66 dominator points back at the second race in 2019. We all know the better equipment he's in. Ran very well at Darlington again. Truex, we all saw that dominator performance he put up. So he should definitely be a contender. He's been a contender at all the tracks with the low aero package this season. Hamlin's another one who's been a contender. It's got to be. It's almost these three like every week now. It's going to seem like it's kind of like that last year when it was Harvick, Truex, and Hamlin. Now it seems like it's Larson, Truex, and Hamlin this year. But outside of those three guys, I think that my next favorite guy to probably put up some dominant performance is going to be Kyle Busch, and I think probably DK missed that a little bit. I would have probably priced Kyle Busch up over Keselowski and Chase Elliott. Kyle Busch, you got to like what you've been seeing out of him. This package seems to suit his driving style more because he actually gets to drive the car. We saw 17 fast laps last week at Darlington. I think he's a guy who could surprise some people this week and outside of that top three.
Brandon, so at the top we've got Truex and Larson. Who do you think's higher owned and who do you have more interest in?
I probably have more history or more interest in Truex based on how that team's just been able to perform here. I would have them projected as 1 and 2 for my interest this week. But it'll probably be Truex. It's going to probably be Truex, Larson, Hamlin in terms of my interest this week.
Yep.
And in terms of that for Jason, you're looking at the guys in the middle of that 10K range, Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski. Any interest in either of them for you?
I will say I have a little bit of interest in. Let's see here, like Joey Logano. I think would be the next guy on that list. He's priced at 9,500. I think he's got a little bit of upside here to maybe show up with a fast car. He ran very well last week at Darlington. Had the third best average position. Dover's a track that last year we saw him have the fourth best average running position at the second race, seventh at the first race. Put up some dominator points in both races. I think he could show up with a fast car, starting ninth, so he'll surprise you with a little bit of PD on top of that. So I'm talking like this is a guy who could probably get you 12 to 15 dominator points, top 5 finish, and score very well.
Brandon, any chance you're going to be putting 2 of the 10K guys in your lineup together, Truex and maybe Kyle Busch, or Truex and somebody else, or Larson and somebody else, or do you think you're going 1 and then trying to hit that 9K and 8K range, which we'll get into in a little bit?
I think you have to if you're like me, and obviously this is on Wednesday, but if I'm looking at Truex and Larson probably each leading 100 laps, give or take, then I got to try and force them in lineups. I think that's how it's going to be. We'll probably be back in the 6K range again. Obviously, we got Priest back at 5'9". I think he's a bit overpriced of where he's at because he's literally starting what will probably run in this race, and I'm curious to see what the interest is for like the punts. Like last week we did see some interest to Quinn Hoff. Obviously he wasn't optimal. The optimal lineup last week was, I think it was Truex, Kyle, Blaney, Newman, Briscoe, and Buescher. And so you saw, basically 3 guys being paid up for, 3 guys over 9,000, and then 1 7K and 2 6K. I think it's kind of a similar build this week of where I think I'm going to aim for 2 10K guys, not worry about the 9K, and go back to like low 8K guys, 7K, and 6K guys.
Jason,
Go ahead. I definitely agree with that approach. You're going to want to pay up for a couple of those guys at the top. And I don't mind also trying to squeeze. I don't know, like I said, I haven't built a single lineup yet, so none of it's possible yet to swing in to get in one of these 9K guys too if they have the upside. I'd much rather push for one of those 9K guys with the dominator upside as opposed to trying to squeeze in these position differential plays we're seeing here, like Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola again, and who else is in that range there? Alex Bowman even is going to be kind of a position differential play. I think if your strategy is to only play one dominator and then try to squeeze in these position differential plays, I do not think that strategy is going to work out at all this week. I'd rather just go for the gusto and try to hit a couple of those guys that score 100 points, and then just, if you got to punt, you got to punt.
Jason, who is the lowest price guy you're going to start a lineup at? Will all your lineups have either Truex or Larson?
I don't think they all would have that. I definitely think you're going to want to have probably some Hamlin, Truex, and you're probably.
So Hamlin would be the lowest guy you would start. So you might have a lineup without Truex and Larson and start it with Hamlin.
Yeah, I could see. In my 20 max, I could see starting a lineup or 2 that way.
Brandon, similar thoughts if you're doing like a 20 max or something like that?
Ask me the question again.
The lowest price guy that you could start a lineup with. So basically, would you have either Truex or Larson in every line, or could you see yourself starting with Denny Hamlin or Chase or somebody and having that be your highest price guy in a lineup?
Fade and Truex.
So okay.
He asked it very, very.
So like
the lowest price.
I'm sorry, dude. I'm like
your highest price.
No, here, let me ask it.
What are you? Yeah,
let me ask it. Aside from Truex and Larson, who's the highest price guy who'd start?
Thank you, Jason. It's probably Kyle or Hamlin. I'm sorry, Ryan. I didn't know you were asking there.
All right, so that's the answer. So you both said that you could see yourself starting a lineup with Denny, and then Brandon said he could see himself starting a lineup with Kyle.
Yeah, because Hamlin's starting second. I mean, we can see him get out. I mean, there's no reason to think that he can't get out there in clean air and just freaking dominate this race and put up 300 points, And then in that case, then your Truex probably isn't going to pay off that value. All
right, so let's get into that next range. Jason mentioned it briefly, but we get to that sub 10K range. Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Alex Bowman. Those are your 9K drivers. 9,200 for Bowman, 9,500 for Logano, 9,800 for Harvick. Jason, you mentioned you had some interest in Logano. Any interest in Harvick or Bowman?
Yeah, I have an interest in Logano. I'm not sure I'm going to land on Bowman too much here. Actually, you know what? I mean, I have to look at it a little bit more than Bowman. I have Bowman right now projected for 48 points. So that's definitely right around where he should be at value wise. It's just a matter on you're going to have to get some Dominator points out of him for that price, which he has put up. Let's see here, 6.5 last year in the second race, 4 in the first race. You're going to need a little bit more out of that from him this year to pay off that price, especially with some of these guys. I mean, I think there's going to be somebody in this range who's going to put up 20, 25 points. And Byron is a guy who's actually kind of interesting. Did you mention him in this range? Is he in here? I'm sorry, I don't have him.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, he's right. He's at 8,900, so he's right at that 9K basically.
Yeah, I think Byron's a guy who's starting third, who we've seen run very well this year. I kind of see him picking up 15 to 20 fast laps here, running top 5 again this race. Those are the type of plays that you're looking for. You're looking for those top guys who have that top 5 upside, 15, 20 fastest laps or Dominator points. So yeah, Bowman, Byron, Logano. I like a lot of those guys. Like I said, we would try cramming it in probably 3 guys over 9K in most of my lineups.
Brandon, Harvick, Logano, Bowman, Byron. Any interest in any of them for you?
It'll probably go Harvick. Bowman's interesting. Like I kind of mean that more in a bad way. Like, if you look at his finishes, 3 of his last 4 have been top 5s. Just he hasn't led laps, and I want to know like what's causing him to finish in this top 5 range. And like, obviously he's getting there throughout the race, but like, is he getting the fast laps? Is he just ending up there? Like, I'll have to look through the stuff on there.
I can pull it up right here for you. Let's see here. Bowman.
Yeah, how many fast laps does he have over the last 4 races?
This year he had 3 at Darlington. 1
no, not this at Dover in the past.
Oh, at Dover. Okay,
yeah.
I got that for you too. Hold on here. Okay, so in the last 4 races at Dover, I have Dom points right here in front of me. I can give you that if that helps you. So he had 10 Dominator points in the second race. 6.5 in the second race at Dover last year, 4 in the first, 17.5 in the second in 2019, and 20.5 in the first race in 2019. So that was a different package, right? Than 2019.
Yeah, and that's back when they had practice. So like last year, and I need to determine if I really want to use how much do I want to use last year, because they were back-to-back days. Like one was ran on a Saturday, I think. It was a doubleheader weekend.
Yeah,
and
Saturday and Sunday.
That's when they were still inverting the field, right? Like
they inverted in the second race, yeah.
Yeah. So like, I need to look more into that.
And I believe he didn't finish very well in the first race, and I think he kind of started towards the front in the second race. Well, I'm guessing because I know I just said its average position here. His average position was 24th in the first race, so I imagine he probably wrecked out or something.
Well, he finished 21st in the first race last year. Was this the one where they purposely tried to finish 20th to start first and got passed? I think it's this one, yeah.
So he's still got 6.5 Dominator points coming through the field there in the second race, so not terrible.
Because right now, like, I feel like I want to be behind Bowman, but I need to look, not necessarily at this year, but I want to see how he's ran here in Hendrick. I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm interested in Bowman, but in like a negative way.
So if we're looking at this 8K range, Jason, who do you think has the highest win equity, even if we put Alex Bowman in that category at 9,200? So between Bowman, Byron, Kurt Busch, Ryan Blaney, Almirola, and Christopher Bell, would you agree William Byron probably has the highest win equity?
I would say it'd be toss up between him and Bowman, I think, as far as win equity. But I would think, Byron I would probably think out of this range, if you have to rank who I think could win, it could be even Byron, Bell, Blaney. No, Byron, Bowman, Bell, Blaney, something like that. I don't know. Yeah, I would think, Byron probably has your best win equity when you're looking at it, with just the way he's ran. He's been pretty much top 5 week in and week out, it seems like.
So you brought up Christopher Bell in this 8K range. Is he your preferred play out of these guys? I'll go over quickly. Christopher Bell at 8K, Almirola 8.2, Blaney's 8.4, Kurt Busch is 8.7, and we kind of already talked about Byron at 8.9. So we kind of take Byron out of the equation. But if we're looking at between Kurt Busch, Blaney, Almirola, and Chris Bell, is Bell your preferred option of those?
Yeah, I think Bell is a great value here at 8,000. I think we've seen this kid run in this 750 horsepower track when these guys actually have to wheel. We've seen this kid run very, very well. He's starting 11th. I think he can definitely probably finish top 6, top 7 again. I mean, that's right around where he's been running in these races, and he's been putting up fast laps. Like they put up 9 fast laps last week at Darlington. I think in a longer race, 400 laps, running up towards the front, I think it's very realistic to see him putting up maybe 15, 20 fast laps, and for $8,000, I think this is extraordinary value.
Brandon, similar thoughts. Is he your preferred play of this range?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Jason there. I do like DiBenedetto. I mentioned earlier that he's one of the drivers who actively cheers for this package. He typically does better with this package than the other one, although this year you could swing it either way on that argument. But I typically like DiBenedetto when they're running this package, especially at a place like at Dover, where it's not necessarily a momentum track, but like you're kind of going to be stuck in a running position. But say that again.
It's kind of like Bristol in a way, a track he runs well at. I mean,
so
like it similarly.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, where I was going to get to that eventually. I couldn't get there on my own. But like when you're looking at how a leader typically runs away at this racetrack, they're the first car. They have absolutely no one to fight. And so they could pull out to an easy lead, start clicking those laps off left and right, whereas everybody else is pretty much battling. And sure, this track is wide. You can run basically 2 grooves, either right at the bottom or sometimes right at the top, depending on what driver you're on. But the exits of the corners are so tight. Like if you're on the outside of someone, you're going to have to check up a little bit to not get in the wall. If you're on the inside, you typically have to check up to not get into the guy on the outside. And so all those checkups kill your speed on the straightaways, and that causes people in front of you to pull away. And DiBenedetto, going back to the Bristol comment that you made, is he's good at those types of tracks. He's good at typically not having to, let off as much or letting people in front of him really pull away.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I might be a little too low on him now that I'm looking at my projection. I think I'm pressured for 13th, which might be, that might be an average finish right around 13th, but he definitely has that top 10 upside that I should probably account for. And when you look at like the last 4 races here at Dover, he was able to put up dominator points in pretty much every race. 4 in 2009, first race 19, 13 dominator points in second race in 2019, 5.75 in the first race in 2020, and 4.25 in the second race in 2020. So about over 5 dom points. It seems like every race in the last 4. Average running position right there, and inside the top 19 for each race as well. So 2 of them at the 12th place. So yeah, I definitely think that's definitely a good call. I might need to raise that projection just a touch, but even at that projection I had him as still pretty close to hitting that 5x value. So,
and I like him starting 18th. Like that's a situation where he should easily pass quite a few people. If everything goes well, he could be contending for like a top 7, top 6. And so I really like Matt DiBenedetto this week.
And you look at that, he's priced right above Custer, who's starting way back. So no one's going to, he's going to definitely be underplayed. I mean, with Bell right there and Custer right there, everybody's going to go. And Almirola, yeah, I think nobody's going to play Matty D this week. That's a great call. I like it.
I'll probably say, because I'm, as you guys know, I'm not playing as many laps as I was. I'll probably play like maybe 5 or 6 this week. There's a chance that I'm probably just 100% on Matt, just so I can get the different dominators at the high value or at the high salary that I want. Like if you use Matt DiBenedetto and whoever you like in the 6K range, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And I think that would probably be the way that I'm going to go this week.
So let's get into this 7K range. You guys kind of already talked about it a little bit with Matty D at the top at 7,800. So let's take him out of this kind of conversation since we just talked about him. But Cole Custer, 7,700. Ruddick, 76. Dylan 74, Eric Jones is 72, and Ricky Stenhouse 7100. Jason, outside of what we just talked about with Matty D, what other guys in this range sparked your interest?
I mean, obviously, you got to have some interest in Custer here. He's probably going to be pretty high on, starting 30th at this price point. But I mean, he should run top 15 as long as he stays out of trouble, which has been hard for Stuart Haas cars, which we've talked about. But I mean, last year at both Dover races, average running position of 10th and 14th. We've seen him running pretty solid at Darlington. He's had some good runs this year where top 15 is definitely a position he should run in, which, I mean, that's 43 DraftKings points. So that's definitely a lot more than that's close to 6x value there at this price tag. So you got to kind of consider Custer a little bit, even with his ownership. And the other guy I think that stands out for me as a guy who I'm interested in is probably going to be Tyler Ruddick. Starting 12th. I don't think a lot of people are going to play him, but he's another guy who I think can get out there and put up, 10 to 20 fastest laps again, run inside the top 20 like we seen him do last week at Darlington. He ran very well. So that kind of in this package that was kind of should translate nicely to him running well this week at Dover. Last year, 16th, 14th best average running position in both races. Picked up about 4 to 5 Dominator points. I mean, I think that's you can definitely see him improve a little bit this year, run inside the top 10, pick up 10 fast laps. It's great value for this price. Plus, he's got the upside, I mean, when he steps up and that car's set up and it's on, I mean, we've seen this team have the upside to run inside that top 5.
Brandon, your thoughts on the 7K range?
So, after looking more, and I just made the note to myself here, since I'm going into this so I don't forget it later in the week, is I really like DiBenedetto, as I just said. I like Ruddick, and I like Dylan. And if I'm committed to trying to get 2 10K guys in there, I might try and commit to having 2 7K guys in those lineups. Like, I like Ruddick. As I mentioned a bit earlier, like, you can run 2 lanes here. Like, you can run the outside lane, get the momentum down the straightaways. I would say that's what Ruddick's going to do, because he said it himself, he hates running the inside. That he naturally just finds himself running the outside groove at racetracks, and so that's always a good thing to see from Ruddick. And like 7,600 and Matt DiBenedetto at 7,800, like pairing those guys together, allows you to have 8,600 left on average for the rest of your drivers. Like, I like that a lot. I actually really like the 7K range this week.
All right, so I guess then the question is, we can get down in this next, like the 6K range. But is this, you kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, Brandon, with Priest. Is there any other general punts you're thinking about, or is that kind of, like you said, with this 7K range, kind of trying to fit these guys in and not necessarily having to go to like a Hoff or a Yaley or something like that? Because that would obviously, I guess, mean sacrificing, a higher 8K or a 9K guy and playing, 2 guys in the 7Ks or something like that.
I think you got to punt, right? If you're trying to play both Larson and Truex and cram in 2 7K guys, you got to have a punt, right?
So going back to why I like the 7K range as much is if this race plays out like I would imagine it will, let's say, or here's an example, like say the race 400 laps, let's say 4 guys lead 100 laps. And you're trying to get those guys in your lineups. Like, if you get those guys, they're going to carry your lineup to be pretty good. And if you can nail like 3 of those guys or like 2 of those guys, I'm okay. I need to look at projections for punts and see what lineups work out, but I think I'm okay with punting this week, like in the 4K, in the low 5K range, if it means that I can get 2 or 3 of those lap leaders who lead, 100 laps, 80 laps. Like, I want those guys in the lineup. That is priority number 1. So if it leads me to playing, Haley, if it leads me to playing like Hoff or somebody down there, like, that's perfectly fine. I mean, Hoff starting 35th basically did the same thing last week, to where he could only lose you 2 positions. People wrecked out, and so technically he couldn't lose any positions because people wrecked out.
So, all right, let's get in. Go ahead, Jason.
I think Hoff would probably be like the most interesting, because like you said, he at least can kind of run a little faster than the rest of these back markers. It seems like, along with Haley, and I mean, I don't think we've talked about. Are we strictly talking back markers here? Or are we talking Alfredo? I mean,
well, let's hear. I did a bad job. I almost got us off track here and getting you guys off track. Then we're going to get on a tangent.
Let me answer this. Let me say this, and that's why I went directly to the back markers. I don't want to play Eric Jones starting 23rd. I don't really care for Suarez. Maybe later in the week if things pop up. Don't really care for him. I don't want to play Paris starting 25th. I don't want to play Anthony Alfredo starting 27th. I'm not playing LaJoie starting 26th, and so that kind of automatically knocks the 5K range out of my interest. That's why I kind of just directly went to the back markers for this conversation.
So, all right,
realistically, what do you realistically think? I'm sorry. What do you realistically think Priest, LaJoie, and Alfredo is going to do? They're going to score 10 points, maybe 10 points more than those back markers. I mean, they're probably not going to crush them as far as points. And your whole point of playing the punt is for the value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right, before we get to those deep punts, let's get into the 6K range and talk about a couple of these guys. We mentioned them earlier when we were talking about last week. But Bubba Wallace, the highest priced in the 6K range, he's $6,900. Newman is $6,800. Buescher $6,600. Chastain $6,500. Sawyers $63. McDowell $62. And Chase Briscoe $6,100. Jason, the first question I have for you, it seems like this package for Chase Briscoe has been decent. Maybe another $6,100 play this week with him?
I think he's interesting as far as upside goes. Like I could definitely see a scenario where he runs, top 12, top 13, kind of like what we saw him last week. But I don't. It's hard to project that out after just 1 week of seeing it last week. So I could justify some Briscoe exposure. But if you're just looking at the guys who I've projected for the most points in this range, I've got Newman and Buescher both projected for more. Newman I actually have projected as the most in this range. That's just him finishing right around where he starting 13th, finishing around 13th, which I think is very doable for the way he's been running recently in these cars. And the same thing with Buescher. I got him pretty much projected to finish right around where he's starting, finishing around 12th place position. Those are solid days there. But then again, when you're looking at kind of what Brandon has talked about and has pointed out very, very effectively, is even at that, even with Newman, finishing where he's starting, which is a great run for Ryan Newman, it's 30 points. It's still only 15 points more than what I have Garrett Smithley projected at for finishing 32nd. So, is it worth paying if you're going to pay down to squeeze in 3 of these big dominators? And then I don't think I'm going to land on this 6K range too much. When you look at that, I just don't see the upside.
Brandon, any interest in you for Chase Briscoe? He starts 17th, so with no fastest laps, no laps led, a 15th place finish gives him 30 points, which is basically 5x his price. Any interest in Briscoe or any of these other 6K range, or kind of like you and Jason were mentioning, if you're going to punt, go all the way to the bottom?
Off the top of my head, maybe Chastain and Chastain and Briscoe might be the only 2 guys I would consider from here. Just talking right now.
I do have Chastain projected for 36. I just had him so high up that I didn't even see him in this range.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, but like those 2 guys, and then if it is those 2 guys, I don't want to fucking deal with what we did last week with fucking Priest as high as he was, with Chastain. And if you look at the optimal, the optimal is really close to being the chalk play. Because we saw Priest. What was Priest at? 61? I
don't think it was that high.
I don't remember. I wrote it down. Hold on.
I got it here.
Let me look.
But yeah, you can only ride the 30% Chastain trade too long before it's going to bite you in the ass, right? Right.
Priest is at 41. Okay, yeah. So he was at 41.1 in the 15. He was 60% in a lot of the single entries. That's why. That's where the 60%. Okay. What am I? Why? What? I'm not playing him. I faded Priest last week in the one lineup I did because I just figured all the builds that I would mess around with, it all went to Priest. Everything wanted to go to Priest, and even if you're hand building, you would end up at Priest at that price range, and I didn't want to deal with that. So if we get into a situation to where everybody's kind of going back to Chastain, and for good reason, he's $6,500, he should run decent, but there's always a chance he could wreck. Like if everything's kind of funneling back to like the one or two drivers in the 6K range, I typically kind of just fade them and hope that they wreck or hope they don't perform well. Or last week, I played Hoff last week because I was in the 7K range. I played Custer. I forgot who else I played, but I was like, if I didn't want to use Priest, I was going to use Corey LaJoie for cheaper, and I figured he had very similar upside, and LaJoie ended up having a better day at much lower ownership. Like, those are the questions that you need to ask yourself and really analyze if you're being funneled to, very, very similar plays in pretty much every lineup build. Like, I'm kind of tempted to just fade those guys.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to think when you're looking at this range, like, where do we think the field's going to fall at on value? I mean, it's going to be a guy like Ross Chastain. I mean, everybody played Chastain for, slightly less last week, starting around the same position. So I can only imagine everybody's going to be back to the Chastain well. So you can probably 30%. But outside of that, like where, I don't know where last week it was obvious the field is going to fall on Priest. I mean, do we think the field's going to go to there's no way the field goes to Alfredo. They owned Alfredo all year. I mean, even though he's starting 27th, he's the guy starting furthest back probably in this punt range, quote unquote, that people are going to go to because people won't play the back markers. I mean, is it going to be Corey LaJoie? It's hard to. So
let's go through. Let me just go through real quick. I'll go through the pricing of all these bottom guys for anybody who might be listening, not necessarily having the pricing in front of them and trying to visualize anything in their head. Because I'll put these punts in the same category. So Priest is 5,900, LaJoie 57, Alfredo 55. Haley's 53, Davison's 52, Smithley 51, Balicki 49, McLeod 47, Hoff 46, and Cody Ware is the lowest price at 45. Brandon, Jason kind of set up that question already for you, but I just wanted to kind of go through the salaries. Where do you think people are going to end up on these punts?
So I want to bring this up and say what you will. I'm not giving out 6 drivers here, but he's giving out lineups. So I would assume most people are going to play Truex and Larson. I would assume that. And then go into the 7K range. I like DiBenedetto, so let's just throw him in that. And then, between those drivers, you get 6,200 left on average for your remaining 3 guys. That's how I would look to see who would be popular here. Say if I like Chastain for whatever, and I throw Truex, Larson, DiBenedetto, Chastain. And these are questions that I'll ask myself. Like, if I'm coming up on a lineup that seems popular or seems kind of like this build where I have $6,100 left on average, what does that lead me to? It's leading me to like people like Priest or people like Briscoe, people like LaJoie. And so if a lot of lineups end up being funneled towards, Briscoe, LaJoie, Priest, that type of stuff, then I really need to try and rebuild or get into a different area with my last driver.
So, Jason, this is going to be kind of a weird question. Hopefully I'll explain it right, which I'm going to ask it to you because maybe you understand my lingo, my logic. But so there's a $400 price difference between Truex and Larson and when you come down Briscoe and Chastain. So if it comes down to that, is it worth it to pay up for Chastain to get Larson, or would you rather go Truex and Briscoe? So if it came down to those two, which pairing do you like more, Truex and Briscoe or Larson and Chastain?
Did
I ask that right?
Yeah, yes. I mean, if I had to choose between those two, it would be Larson and Chastain.
Brandon, same thoughts?
Try to squeeze in Truex and Larson.
I like Truex and Briscoe more. Between those two.
Yeah, well, that wasn't the option.
What was the option? Who was with Truex?
Truex and what did you use? It Truex and Briscoe?
Truex and Briscoe.
Yeah. That was your option. Yeah. All right. See, I feel like I'm going crazy anytime Ryan talks to me.
You said that so confidently. I was like, he just won me money, and then I was like, wait, that wasn't the option. I was like, no, but it was. So okay, that was you. That was. It's very rare I get Brandon Cruz like confidence, like I have a decision, like I know what I would want it to be, and that's almost I think what threw me off there. But yeah, so any other interest for either of you in any of these punts down here? Or I guess maybe I should also ask, which of these punts would you absolutely not play? That's no question.
Probably McLeod, right? Because he's starting 31st, so he has a little bit further he can go back. So I probably wouldn't play McLeod. But look, he really hasn't done freaking anything. So maybe not him, but I mean, I think you could probably go Hoff. You could probably go Haley.
So when I look at punts, I ask myself, or I look at two things. If I'm punting some god-awful punt, it's because I plan to use 100% of the salary, or leave like $100, $200 on the table, etc. A very small amount. And so that usually means I'm going to pay min salary or very close to it. And so usually my punt plays are left to the bottom three in pricing. So if you look at McLeod this week, 4,700, starting way too high, not going to work. Cody Ware starting 34th. If I need that extra 100 from Half, I don't mind Cody Ware. Quinn Half starting 35th. I want guys who are pretty much min price who can't lose positions. And Quinn Hoff and Ware are the closest to that this week. Everybody else would be null and void to me, so Ware or Half would be the only guys I can say. And between the safer guys, it's Quinn Hoff for sure.
Anything else we haven't talked about this week before we finish up?
Yeah, if you start a lineup with like Hamlin, Hoff, Truex, that leaves you with 7,400 average remaining salary, so you can fall right into that 7K range.
Why are you playing Hamlin?
I'm just putting him in there with somebody different. Okay, go to Larson.
If you're playing Hoff, man, you got to be shoving in Truex and Larson. That's the way to go.
Well, I mean, you don't think like Hoff could be optimal and Larson could wreck? Like is that not a possible scenario?
If I was a Twitter troll, I'd answer, well, anybody can wreck.
Well, you know what but I mean, like if you're playing 20 lineups and you're going to Hoff, like why aren't you going to have some Truex Hamlin combos? I mean, you're not, right?
Yeah, well, you should do that anyway. Like if you're making that many lineups.
Get off my back, bro. All right. Jesus Christ.
All right, let's
7,300 is what you have left if you start with those.
Two and done portion of the show, which I was once again mocked last week for my pick and told I would be, and this is an exact quote that I wrote down, back to down 100 points for both of us. Wrong.
Who did you have?
Not down 100 points to either of you. I had Chris Buescher, who had 29 points. So I'll go through it. Chris Buescher had 29 points, so I'm still in last, but we're getting there. I've got 363. I appreciate Brandon. He picked Kurt Busch, who had 2 points. Brandon.
I still don't know what happened to him.
The bottom line is his car caught on fire, and apparently that's not good for a car. That's what I learned. And Jason had Kevin Harvick, 37 points, so he is at 459. So it's 459, 413, 363.
You know what's funny?
Yep.
I thought I had fucking Martin Truex this whole goddamn time.
Nope. You had Kevin Harvick.
I was like, yeah, I got the most points you could possibly get. Won every stage, won the race.
If you had Truex, I might have accidentally, conveniently forgotten to do 2 and done on this week. That might have happened.
God damn it! I don't know why I thought I had him. Shit.
Well, for the second straight week in a row, Mr. Last Place, Brandon, who would you
DFL, Brandon Cruz. Have I used Truex before?
You've used him once, yes.
Yeah, okay, I'll play DiBenedetto.
All right. So Brandon is going to go with Matt DiBenedetto.
What are we on week 12? That means I can finally start cycling through.
That's week 12. We are...
Or race 12.
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah, this is the 13th week that we're doing.
13th race, yeah. So that means I'm finally at the point where I can kind of stop burning bad plays and get back to playing good plays after this week.
And you kind of read my mind, because last week, obviously, I took Chris Buescher, which, as good as he's been, he's still not one of those kind of top-tier, top-team drivers. So I will take somebody that has been good here recently, somebody I have not used this year. I will take Alex Bowman.
Alex Broman, huh?
Oh, the Showman Bowman.
It's a lot of that is because I haven't used him yet this year, but I think Bowman's, obviously his track history, he's been fairly good here.
Have I used William Byron yet?
You used him 2 weeks ago.
Can you post our thing again? It's been like 6 weeks since you posted our thing, so I feel bad the viewer or the listeners are just like, have I used this guy? It's like we're all dementia.
Yeah, I can.
If they're still listening,
I can
just want to hear
post
us
that.
talk.
I can. I can post that in a second. Jason, I can quickly go through. Bubba Chase, Truex. Well, Bubba Chase twice. Truex, Logano, Larson, Bell, Blaney, Hamlin, Priest, Byron, Harvick. Those are who you've used.
Oh, fuck.
So at a brief glance, the top tier drivers you haven't are Bowman, who I already took, Keselowski.
I haven't picked BK, huh? No, I don't want to pick him here. I'll save him for a 5.
Trying to go through who else.
It's okay. I'll just pick somebody. Give me Tyler Reddick.
Well, good, because then, now that you're locked into this pick, I did just realize, I did say it, but you haven't used Kyle Busch, and I don't know if you necessarily would have used him here, but.
Oh, I would have, but it's okay.
All right, so we are that. So Jason has Ruddick, Brandon has Matty D, I have Alex Bowman. For once, oh my God, this is a miracle. For once, I think I have the best driver of the three. Who knows how they're going to finish, but I think I at least have the best driver of the three.
What? Alex Bowman? No way. Tyler Reddick would drive circles around Bowman if they were in equal equipment.
Yeah, but the issue is that Bowman drives on the circle. Ruddick drives like around the circle where the wall is. That's the issue.
He's a driver. Reddick's a driver.
That's. I'll be honest. The first intro that I really had like into like NASCAR and like deep diving into it. I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was a radioactive from Jimmy Johnson at Dover. I think he actually ended up crashing in the race, but everyone was complaining how Johnson was driving. Jimmy Johnson was just like, "Did these boys come here to drive or they come to race?" And it's just like that was like okay, like that's just how he drove, and that was my introduction to NASCAR was Jimmy Johnson at Dover. And then when I looked into it, turns out he was pretty damn good here.
We almost made it through a Dover segment without talking about how good Jimmy Johnson was here, Brandon.
We almost did, man.
We almost made it.
No, Brandon mentioned it earlier.
The Jimmy Johnson. No, I was saying I'm glad we don't have to deal with any Johnson talk. And it always leads back. He won 10 races here. All right, so before we leave, let's check in. Let's do episode 2 of When Is Bubba Wallace Getting Fired? The cool stat I'm bringing up this time around, is how many top 10s do you think Bubba Wallace had at this point in the season last year compared to this year? No guessing.
No guessing?
I mean, no looking it up.
What do you want me to do, look it up? Hold on.
Yeah, there you go.
So two's my guess.
Okay, what'd you say, 1, Jason? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so Bubba Wallace had 2 top 10s entering week 13 last year.
Were they both super speedways?
No, he finished 6th at Las Vegas, and he finished 10th at Bristol last season.
So are you trying to say that 2311 car isn't any good? They're trying to sabotage Bubba Wallace. Is that what you're saying, Brandon Cruz?
Yeah, let's see. He's finished 16th 3 times. That's his best finish this season.
Let's be honest, this is a lot more than episode number 2 about when Bubba's getting fired.
Well, it's the first time I'm bringing, evidence. It's been a while. I like looking at things like this.
Yeah, that's kind of wild to think that he's hasn't finished better than 16th this year.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at that before the show, and crazy. I was like, wow, he really has been bad in this car.
Like he's had, I guess he's had one good run, right? This Phoenix was probably his only really good run where like, oh, look at Bubba running inside the top 10. Then he
that's only because they didn't take tires, or they took 2 tires at the end.
He was running okay before that, but yeah, he definitely got improved his position by a few spots by doing that. But yeah, that's wild. I mean, he's not gonna get fired this year, right? Obviously, but. And I don't know. He's got so much. Like, you're a new team. You need funding. You need sponsors. Like, it's hard to think that they're gonna get rid of that golden goose this early. They'll ride him into the ground. He could end up out of the sport by the time he's out of that car. But I think he's got a couple more years in it. I do. I mean, we always saw Truex didn't punt him. He's gonna have a little bit of a favor treatment. I can't see him get rid of him. I mean, he's got McDonald's on, DoorDash. I mean, he's bringing some big ass sponsors.
Don't bring up McDonald's. They sponsored Jay McMurray for his whole career.
Well, I'm just saying, if you're a team, though, right? And you got a guy who's bringing you a top tier sponsorship like that in a sport where it's a lot of top teams are struggling for good sponsors. I mean, that's value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean more than a win? I mean, probably. Who are they going to get in that's going to win right away? You know.
If you told MJ that he could make like $5 million and not get a top 10, or he could break even and win one race, he would for sure break even and win one
No
race.
way.
Yes, he
Why?
would. 100%.
Look at the freaking. I mean, look at his basketball team. Are they like? Does he not settle for?
Yeah, but that's almost like different because he's like he's proven what he can.
But
he's like proven what he can do in basketball. Here, it's like if he comes and he's a cup. Yeah, I get it.
Like, you think he'd have more incentive to be good in basketball, for his team to be good in basketball, since that's his sport? Like, you're thinking, like, oh no, I really want to win at NASCAR. Fuck that basketball stuff. No, that's ridiculous.
No, but I almost think of it differently because I think of him as almost he's going for that, like, I can do everything. Like, he played basketball, he played baseball, he's known as a good golfer. Now if he becomes a NASCAR owner and wins, I think he's just trying to, like he's already, for most people, or a lot of people, the best basketball player, or at worst, the top 2 basketball player of all time. I think he's at the point where he's trying to be like, I can win in this sport, I can win in this sport, I can win in this sport, I can win in this sport. Obviously, he's not driving
that,
but owning
though.
No, for sure.
I don't know. I don't think that he's said it. He wants to win. I mean, of course, you're not going to be a owner and say, "Well, I don't really give a shit if I win races or not. I just want to make some money." I mean, obviously, he's going to say all the right things, but I mean, it's obvious. Like, his pick for driver wasn't like him going after some wins, was it? I mean.
No, I think it was him trying to get some sponsors and get his thing off the ground. Start for sure. I don't disagree with that. But I think this is like, we're talking year 1. I think we're talking like he's expecting to win at some point, like fairly soon. I mean, he's worth what?
Okay,
like, he's worth $1.5 billion. At some point, money's all the same.
Brad Keselowski was up for a contract last year, right? So if you was Michael Jordan and you said, "Oh, I'm okay spending all this money just to win races," then why the fuck wouldn't you just spent money and went for Brad Keselowski?
No, and I mean, yeah, obviously it's all valid points, and Denny being a part of that has, obviously had some sort of a say in it. Obviously, him and Bubba used to have their issues. Obviously, I guess those have kind of dissipated at least a little bit. I don't know. My thing with MJ is like he's worth $1.5 billion. Like at some point, it's all the same, right? Like
it couldn't possibly be the fact that putting Michael Jordan's name with Bubba Wallace, we're gonna get a shit ton of good sponsors, and we're gonna run this for a couple of years, Like I think that was the reality with the decision. So I don't think the decision is going to change next year because I don't think their financial problems and their sponsorship problems is all of a sudden going to be resolved after a mediocre run with one team this year.
No, and I agree, and maybe it is me expediting the process, but I think this was like hey, we're gonna get this off the ground, but when we're gonna start expanding to 2, 3, potentially 4 cars, who knows? Like at that point, like we're paying money to drivers to win races because we want it to be like Penske, Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick, and 2311. I think that's what they're trying to get.
It takes a long time to get to that point.
No, for sure, 100%. But obviously,
I bet you
get a Brad Keselowski.
I was gonna say, I bet you Junior's team wins the race its first year.
Well,
and I think Colleague might have a
better team. Have better drivers in there. He's not going to get Bubba Wallace to drive his car out there, I'm sure.
But so even like, and not to get off on this whole tangent, or whatever, Jason. But like, do you think like if MJ and Denny would have gone to Brad Keselowski, do you think he had interest in that? Like, would he have had interest, or would it have had to been the money?
Well, I mean, he was. I mean. It seemed like Brad Keselowski was listening to offers, but I mean, what teams was there to make an offer to him last year? I mean, Gibbs wasn't really available for a ride, right? I mean, Stewart Haas already had their stuff kind of lined up. It seemed like, right? I mean, I think they were the only team that could have made the play. Like, nobody else is going to make the play. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe BK was just trying to renew his contract with Penske. Maybe he wouldn't have. I can't answer that, but it definitely didn't seem like they attempted it. And you figure if you're looking for wins, that would have been the guy to go for.
All right. Well, I've definitely gotten us off track as usually I don't, but today for some reason multiple times we did. But
Man,
Jason,
I got you triggered with that Bubba Wallace thing.
What?
It just opens up me to thinking about like everything else because then it's just like because then you say that and then I think about like okay well like Matty D's probably likely to be in a if they go into a second car he's probably got a decent chance to be it and then is he the veteran and then do they go to a younger guy than Bubba, do they go to a third? It's just it goes my brain goes crazy when we start thinking about teams expanding and teams that have the money to realistically expand to probably 3 or 4 cars.
I mean, I think Toyota doesn't have any shortage of good drivers coming up to the ranks.
I guess that's kind of it. But I do think they do if they're expanding. Like
Brandon mentioned, John Hurd-Nemechek is going to be John Hurd-Nemechek.
Who do you think sells a charter first?
I don't
because I don't think
anybody does.
Well, then nobody's starting a new team.
Well, I mean, where we'll lease it, right?
I don't
sell it.
I don't.
Like, well, I mean, if you're Rick Ware, won't you make more money leasing it than
I think you'd make more money holding on. Maybe not.
Well, he still would own it. He could still would own it and be able to sell it. But I mean, operating the team or just like saying, hey, pay me X amount of dollars every week to run in this number. It seems like that's probably what he's holding out for, right? Because once this new car comes, right? There's going to be new teams that are going to be wanting in the sport because it's all of a sudden going to be more affordable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, isn't that kind of why he's probably scooped up all this? So then he's going to have that leverage to either A, sell them and make a shit ton of money, or B, lease them out and make solid income. I would think. I mean,
I think he wants to race him because I think he'd already be leasing them out.
Huh? Maybe.
Yeah. I mean,
he kind of is an Xfinity, right?
Yeah, and I mean he's ran an IndyCar program for crying out loud, and an IMSA program, on and off. Like I've said before, he's like.
You think he's legitimately trying to put together a competitive team? Eventually, that's their goal. You think it?
I don't know about that, but I don't think they're there to lease. I think they're really there to race, and I think that puts more pressure on like JTG and like Spire. Really,
if teams like that fold up before, I mean, that would just be terrible for the sport to like replace JTG with a new junior ride. You know what I mean? Like, I won't want to see teams like that leave.
Well, that's kind of how it's gone. Like, you had MWR, right. You had Levine, you had Front Row lost a car.
You're right, yeah. You're absolutely right.
It's more the bigger teams getting screwed over. I think so. I mean, that's interesting too, because I would love to see Dale Earnhardt Jr. Run junior motorsports in the Cup Series.
Yeah, that's so.
Go Fast lost theirs too. I don't know how much higher they are than Rick Ware, but didn't they have a charter? They had a charter last year.
Yeah, but that's not really.
But I mean, there's 36 charters, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there are 4 spots every week to show up and compete for, right? Once qualifying comes back.
Let's see. The 37 is one of them.
But I mean, JR Motorsports has the opportunity to race.
Who?
I mean, like if Junior Motorsports wanted to have a car, they don't necessarily need the charter to get into the race. They just have to beat out 4 cars every week.
Junior said he needs that to start his.
He needs the security of having a charter.
Yeah, he needs that.
Yeah, because NASCAR will definitely let Dale Earnhardt Jr. fail. That's something that will certainly happen.
Okay, so these are the chart at the bottom. Everybody kind of knows the top ones. So Rick Ware has 3. BJ McLeod has 1. Spire has 1. So, and Front Row Motorsports has 2. So the open cars, off the top of my head, would be the 52, the 37, the 77. I guess really Timmy Hill, because we don't even have a 40-car field right now.
Right. Well, could you see that if we start getting interest in new teams next year with this new car and all this, that maybe NASCAR? I mean, could NASCAR open up to 4 more charters and go back to 43-car field?
They can't bring us back to a car that puts good racing on. I doubt they're going to bring that back.
Well, they can change. They change rules all the time. I mean, they could easily just. Especially, I mean, don't you think they would, if Junior wanted back in the sport and wanted to bring 2 cars, right? And Dale Earnhardt's name coming back in the sport, but nobody will sell them a charter. Like, you don't think NASCAR would say, okay, we're going to make a couple more charters for you and expand the field?
I'm trying to think of who's bought a charter since.
Who's Timmy Hill race? Is he MBM?
Yeah, he's NBA. They don't have a charter.
So they don't have a charter?
No, it was all based on 2012, who ran full time. But the teams that have bought, the major teams that have bought one, it's been Wood Brothers, or they're still leasing one, but it's been Wood Brothers, and it's been the Rick Ware guys, and some of the other smaller teams. And so if they get rid of the charters or expand them, they're cutting those values pretty. They're not in half, but they're certainly losing a ton of value there.
Mm-hmm. So is that something that, do the teams have to vote on that, or is that something that NASCAR just unilaterally?
I have no idea.
And so I know Smithley's an MBM driver. He's been driving for Rick Ware this year. He's been driving one of those cars.
Yeah. Well, at the start of the year, because they switched the numbers at the start of this year. So Rick Ware has the 51, and then they had a charter for the 15, the 27, and the 54, but they replaced the 27 and 54 with the 51 and 52.
I think it's 53. Is it not 53?
53, whatever. I don't really care about these guys enough to know.
Yeah, no.
But, I mean, the whole charter situation is dumb.
Yeah, that'll be a whole other episode of getting into the charters and how they can basically potentially help or hurt the sport, depending on how you look at it. But, okay, I officially got us off into a basically 20-minute tangent.
It's
so
good that we have these conversations with people listening, because a lot of times we get off the podcast and we have these conversations and we're like, oh,
well, that's true.
We should have recorded that.
And
so it's good.
And like you said, the people that are still listening at this point, like, this is the kind of stuff they're listening for too. Like, they just like to hear, us talk and just, talk NASCAR and whatever. That's, if they're still listening at this point, that's kind of what it is. But speaking of talking NASCAR and doing all of that stuff, Jason, where can everyone find your stuff? Not always just for the Cup Series, but Truck, Xfinity, throughout all of the NASCAR stuff.
Yep, this week we got Xfinity and the Cup Series, free NASCAR, DFS.com. That's where you can find all my content. And you can follow me on Twitter at DFS NASCAR. I try to respond to pretty much every DM that can be sent to me, every tweet that gets put at me, to try to answer all your guys' questions before locks. So take advantage of that if you want. And like I said, you can also leave comments here on YouTube. I've been answering those questions as well. So that's really it for me. DFS NASCAR, www.freenascardfs.com.
Brandon, where can they find out your stuff?
You can find me at Brandon Cruz DFS on Twitter, YouTube, and Patreon for the Xfinity and the Cup Series this weekend.
And as always, make sure you guys are following me on Twitter as well, Gambling DFS Tips. Also, my website, betwithbommel.com. NASCAR articles, UFC articles. We got horse racing this week with the Preakness is here, the second second race of the Triple Crown, so I'll be covering some of that stuff as well. And then obviously on Twitter we talk NASCAR and do all of that stuff as well. So as always, we thank you guys for listening. Whatever platform you listen on, rate, review, subscribe, like. Jason was talking about how on YouTube, if you comment, he's been answering some of those comments, so you can kind of do a little Q&A there if there's any questions. But the 5 stars, the ratings, the likes, subscribing, that all helps us keep this free and giving you guys the NASCAR content that you like. Next week, we are at COTA, Circuit of the Americas in Austin. So back to a road course, and a road course we haven't seen. So some similarities with some others and some differences that we will talk about next week. But we thank you guys for listening. On behalf of Jason, I am Ryan. And Brandon, as always, we end the podcast. May your lineups avoid the whammies. Thanks, guys.